everyone. Thank you for coming to Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian online book talk. This event is hosted by the Center for Inquiry Canada, your community for science and secularism. My name is Onur Romano. I am a co-organizer of the CFIC Victoria branch and the branch manager of the virtual branch. I am also honored to serve in the board of directors of our organization. CFIC is Canada's only national nonprofit with the mission of promoting and educating the public on critical thinking, science, and secularism. We work to equip people to make decisions based on evidence, rational thinking, and compassion. To that end, we hold events like this to provide an opportunity for you to engage with subject matter experts on a variety of topics. In these days of physical distancing, all of CFIC's events and activities are provided online, available from coast to coast to coast. We will be recording Seth's talk for publication on CFIC's YouTube channel, but we will not be recording the Q&A session. To minimize background noise, we put everyone on mute. After Seth Andrews' talk, there will be a Q&A moderated by myself, during which the audience will have an opportunity to ask questions using the raised hand feature in Zoom. We rely entirely on donations and membership to allow us bring you events such as this. Please visit our website or email me for more information about how to become a member or make a donation. Now, I would like to introduce you to this event's speaker, Seth Andrews. Seth Andrews is an American activist, author, and speaker on the subject of atheism. He is also the creator and the host of the Thinking Atheist podcast and YouTube channel, as well as the author of 3 self-published books. Prior to his atheist activism, he was a fundamentalist Christian and had a 10-year career as a Christian radio host. Seth comes from a Christian family who studied theology. When his public school education conflicted with the religious teachings he had received at home, his parents transferred him to the small church-owned Temple Christian School and later to the Eastwood Baptist School. And years after, Seth evolved into an atheist activist. In his latest book, Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian, Seth takes a deep dive into how the United States became so divided and how Fox News in particular contributed to this. As a former far-right Christian evangelical radio host, he breaks down his personal transformative journey from drinking the Fox News Kool-Aid to becoming an atheist speaker and podcaster. Welcome, Seth.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yes.
Are you guys ready for me to begin the presentation? I'm at your disposal today, and I want to thank everybody for coming out on a Sunday evening. I know that doing online presentations in the era of COVID is kind of a strange thing, but it's also been interesting to watch us adapt, modify our sort of procedures for how we do connection. And I'm thankful that if we have to go through COVID, we're doing so in the era of the internet, where we have the opportunity to have presentations like this. I'll be going back and forth to a slideshow using Zoom. It's a little clumsy. I've got 2 dogs, including a foster dog, in my direct vicinity. This is one of those weird quirks of doing a home-based online speech. So I'm expecting the door to open as family comes in from San Diego if my dogs go crazy. I thought about just leaving them downstairs, but then I thought, no, it's kind of charming. If they go crazy, that'll just be something interesting, some sort of a weird idiosyncrasy, which is part of the COVID era online speech. Okay, let me switch over to my slide. Let's see. Starting screen share will stop other participant screen share. And there. Anybody familiar with this guy? His name is Tucker Carlson. He is one of the primetime hosts of Fox News. And it was Tuesday, the 5th of June of last year, when Tucker Carlson went on live television and he sounded off on his pet conspiracy for the day. And on this occasion, it was not atheists or liberals or secular humanists. On this day, he wailed about the tyranny of the metric system.
Almost every nation on earth has fallen under the yoke of tyranny, the metric system. From Beijing to Buenos Aires, from Lusaka to London, the people of the world have been forced to measure their environment in millimeters and kilograms. The United States is the only major country that's resisted, but we have no reason to be ashamed for using feet and pounds.
Okay, so where does this, see if I can switch back here. Let me move the window over. Zoom, meeting controls. I will find it. Okay, can anybody see me in the chat? I'd like you to tell me if you're able to see me there. You can see me?
You are still sharing screen.
Okay, stop share. How's that? Better?
Now we can see you.
So where does this fear of the metric system come from? Well, I find it interesting because fear sells. Fear gets attention. And I think fear is also a very effective way to motivate the easily frightened. And I wrote about this phenomenon in my new book. It's called Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian. Come over here and show you. There's the cover of it. And if you want to find out more, you can simply go to SethAndrews.com. I have a sampling of the audiobook there if you would like to take a look at it. SethAndrews.com. The targeting of fears is paramount if you're trying to motivate this particular flavor of people. I wrote about this guy in my book. He's not on Fox News. Charlie Kirk is founder of the evangelical conservative organization Turning Point USA. It constantly warns about doom unless the godless left is defeated. So in advance of the 2020 U.S. presidential election, mid-September, Charlie Kirk posted this video rant.
Because if we lose, they're going to come after the churches, they're going to come after the organizations, they're going to come after the people, they're going to come after the social media accounts, they're going to come after the bank accounts, they're going to come after every single person that played any form and role into trying to defend President Trump. But social media banning, following in the streets, targeting in every form and fashion. If we lose, if the president loses, they will come for us all. They will come for your children. They will come for your schools. They will come in every fashion. And they won't stop. This idea that the left is all of a sudden going to embrace the...
Okay, so they're coming for you, right? They're coming for your children. It's a common narrative that we hear a lot from right-wing evangelicals, especially in the USA. They are coming. They're just around the corner. They're just over the hill. They're approaching. They're going to come take away your safety, your peace of mind. They're going to steal your job. They're going to prevent your ability to worship as you see fit. They're going to stifle your speech. We see that in the War on Christmas narrative. It's going to be illegal to say Merry Christmas in this country. Of course, they're coming for your freedoms, your kids, your guns. And I live in a culture or a country where there are more guns than citizens in the USA, more than 350 million firearms in this nation. And of course, they're coming for your country and your future. And this fear narrative is extremely effective. It's so powerful, it's so visceral, and it's everywhere. And while the media certainly is always in the ratings business, and it's long been guilty of playing to audience emotion, there's a tone to Fox News that I think really resonates with Christian nationalists who have long held the reins of power in this country. They believe this is a Christian nation. The rest of us are either anti-America or second-class citizens.
Reverend, you say we still need God's help. no question, our country is still in great trouble. A humanistic, atheistic agenda.
Well, apparently the God they worship is the God of the pagan God of the Old Testament, Moloch, who allowed for child sacrifice.
God haters, slanderers, and they're senseless, faithless, heartless.
Okay, you see what we're up against. I wrote in my book about the American perception of atheists and agnostics. One of the definitions of godless, if you go to the dictionary and you type in godless, one of the definitions is to be wicked, evil, and sinful. And so the question then becomes, well, how can someone be a good American or even a good human being if they are wicked, evil, and sinful? There was a Pew Research poll from a few years ago that revealed that about a third of Americans say that it's very important for a person to be a Christian to be considered a true American, whatever that is. Now, among white evangelical Protestants, that number jumps to 57%. 57% of white evangelical Protestants say that you have to be a member of their religion to be a true American. This is echoed by mega pastors like this guy. His name is Robert Jeffress. Dr. Jeffress is pastor of First Baptist Dallas, Texas. Massively big church. He, of course, is pals with Donald Trump. He did a sermon in 2018, in June of that year, and he titled the sermon, "America is a Christian Nation."
America was not founded as a nation that is neutral toward Christianity. America was founded as a Christian nation.
Okay, so you're seeing the narrative. Whoops, there it is, stop share. You're seeing the narrative that we belong to a specific religion, his specific religion. And his sermon was a massive tap dance around the founding fathers and all of this God speak, which has infected our language and culture over the past several hundred years. Now, we're not a nation that is hostile to religious liberty. And it was never the intention of the founders or the Constitution to be hostile to religious liberty. We're talking about the private exercise of religion, but they did not found the government as a church. So what the hell are all of these theocrat activists doing in the halls of power in league with the White House, essentially saying that their God runs the show? This is Paula White. She was at the Trump inauguration. Let me see if I can switch back to the screen here. Share.
And join our nation to your purpose. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. The psalmist declared, let your favor be upon this one nation under God. Let these United States of America be that beacon of hope to all people and nations under your dominion, a true hope for humankind.
Okay, so the question is, why in the world are we doing Christian prayers at a presidential inauguration? This was actually began back in the mid-1950s by devout Presbyterian President Eisenhower. He actually wrote his inaugural prayer, and he brought Billy Graham, or Nixon, I think. What was it? Ike brought him in, and then Nixon brought Billy Graham into the White House, the famous, world-famous evangelist. So here you have Paula White. She is Trump's personal spiritual advisor. She is also on the Evangelical Advisory Board. Why does the American White House have an Evangelical Advisory Board? It's a big question for those of us who are pro-American Constitution, which separates the church and the state. This is a nation where our tax dollars essentially represents Christians, non-Christians, like Catholics, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Jainists, Sikhs, Wiccans, Taoists, deists, seculars, and of course, atheists. Let me come over here. Paula White claimed that she had answered God's call to serve this administration. I'm going to play another clip here. This is awesome. Because saying no to Trump would be like saying no to God. Now, she enjoys a massive net worth while asking her audience to send her money That's right. Send Paula White money so your life won't end in disaster.
I am speaking prophetically by the Holy Spirit, and you are to sow a $3,000 seed. When you obey the voice of the Lord and you do what God's telling you to do, you need to send in $35,000. You need to send in that $100,000 check. I'm telling you, and God has mandated, if you do not write that P.O. box and you do not call that toll-free number and you do not become a ministry of sustainer, you will never see sustainment in your life and your dream will die.
Holy cow. Like your dream is going to die. By the way, Paula White apparently skipped over that verse in the New Testament, the command out of 1 Timothy 2 that said, I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. She must be quiet. It ain't my rule, written in the Bible. Okay. So now we've got the Supreme Court in play, especially after the recent death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, with a scramble by evangelicals to secure as much power as humanly possible. You got Energy Secretary Rick Perry. He believes Donald Trump's appointment is part of America's religious destiny. He called him the chosen one. Trump himself has echoed that, calling himself the chosen one. Again, this is appealing to Christians already religiously primed to fall in line behind authority, right? God has chosen the leader. The leader's authority is something that is divinely inspired and not held accountable by the people. It is essentially an edict put in place by the dear leader. Cult expert Stephen Hassan has called it the cult of Trump. We see a lot of cultish type things happening right now in the United States. You have someone acting more like a king instead of a president, no accountability, absolute authority, and absolute allegiance, demanding absolute loyalty, changing the narrative, essentially altering reality to become a new reality, and telling all of his listeners and followers not to pay attention to the criticisms or the critiques, right? Pay no attention to anybody else's word. Pay only attention to my word, because I am the arbiter of truth. You can trust me. And this weird cult mentality continues today. I mean, after 4 years of this, I would have thought some of it would wane, but it seems to be surging in many pockets of the United States. It's freaking terrifying. We had evangelist Franklin Graham. He said, I just wanted to pull this out of the inauguration ceremony of 2017. He actually said this from the podium on the 20th of January, 2017.
Mr. President, in the Bible, rain is a sign of God's blessing. And it started to rain, Mr. President, when you came to the platform.
Okay, all right. So the message is that even the weather affirms the divine appointment of this savior figure in the United States. And religious people clap and swoon because they think it's truly miraculous, not really considering that it rains 9 out of 30 days in Washington, D.C. in the month of January. That apparently did not occur to them. But you see, I mean, example after example of this bleeding of American evangelical Christianity and American government. And we'll get into the founding fathers again here in just a second. Let me go back to this guy quickly. Mega Pastor John Hagee. This guy's another Texas pastor out of San Antonio. He declares we're a Christian nation. This guy is a Christian Zionist. He doesn't see the state of Israel as merely the establishment of a Jewish nation. He thinks this is part of the marking of the return of the Jews to Zion. This is part of the end times, part of the book of Revelation. This marks the beginning of the return of Jesus Christ. You've got this guy, speaking of Zionism, Secretary of State Pompeo told the Christian Broadcasting Network, he said, Trump may be divinely appointed like Queen Esther to protect God's people by fortifying the Jewish state of Israel. Now, Trump had just recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Pompeo saw this not as a logical or even a human event, but something that was prophesied by the Bible. This is foreign policy, but is rooted in superstition. That, to me, is terrifying. You got Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos. She's in charge of America's public school system. She is a hardcore evangelical zealot. She's on record saying she thinks her reforms of the system should, quote, advance God's kingdom. Guess which God she's talking about? Of course, it's the Christian God. We got taxpayer-funded schools in places like Florida, Louisiana, South Dakota. They're now legally required. They're required by law to conspicuously display religious banners invoking God. We have organizations like this one. This is a really insidious organization called Project Blitz. In 2017 and 2018, they brought more than 75 different bills that promoted Christianity over all other faiths and no faith. Bibles and Christian prayers in public schools, religious excuses for discrimination against non-Christians, gays, Muslims, etc., biblically informed prohibitions on female reproductive choice, and the embedding of a single religion, Christianity, in a nation that's supposed to separate the church and the state, and again, represent people of all faiths and none. You got Alabama. 25 Christian white legislators in Alabama voted into law draconian measures to restrict the reproductive rights of women. All right. This speaks to so many shades of Christianity and Christian authoritarianism, right? God puts the man in charge. The man's in charge of the woman. The woman serves the man. The man makes all the big decisions. Oh, look, we've got 25 male Republicans who are essentially telling women what they can and cannot do with their bodies. But no, this woman doesn't get off the hook. The governor, Kay Ivey, said, hey, I signed into law the Alabama Human Life Protection Act. She's a devout Christian. She rooted her signing of the bill in a belief in her God. She's untroubled with the whole every life question as she shortened the appeals process for people on death row with the Fair Justice Act. So essentially, she's an Old Testament kind of person. Like, she's interested in the fetus before birth, but after birth, all bets are off. And by the way, let's execute people in the electric chair. That's kind of how she rolls. People like us dare to challenge or criticize this foisting of Christian laws and theocratic government and policy upon the American people. And what do the Christian nationalists do? They cry persecution, and they do it with this catchy little phrase: religious freedom or religious liberty. This is Attorney General William Barr, and he's complaining about these militant secularists attacking the United States from within. Now, what are we saying out there? We who are church-state separation, pro-constitution, secular people. We say religion's a private thing. It is not a government thing. Easy enough, right? Public schools are not Christian churches. Christian monuments should not decorate our Capitol buildings. You can't discriminate against non-Christians. You can't pitch a national religion and monopolize your power. This is not controversial stuff. But for those who are enjoying tremendous latitude and religious privilege right now, those who hold the reins of power, their way of staving off all criticism is to demonize people like you and me, and they call us militant secularists who are enemies of religious freedom. That's why you got Donald Trump, who has essentially fabricated the entire war on Christmas idea. We go through this every freaking fall, every freaking winter. It's exasperating. Bill O'Reilly on Fox News actually started sounding this drum way back 15 whatever years ago. So in November, they start running all these news stories about how Christianity is under attack and Christmas is under attack. Soon it will be illegal for free American citizens to wish each other Merry Christmas. They want us to say Happy Holidays because they hate Jesus. There was a YouTube guy or a social media, I guess I call him a celebrity, pseudo-celebrity, Joshua Feuerstein. So he has this viral video from 5-6 years ago where he's freaking out, saying that when Starbucks released their holiday coffee cups and they had no writing on them, they didn't have the word Christmas on them, they were just sort of a holiday red color. Well, they had omitted Jesus Christ from his own holiday. It's a crisis. It's a war on Christmas. All these God haters are trying to assault, including Starbucks, are trying to assault Jesus on his birthday. And so he went around to different Starbucks, and when they ask you for your name, when you order your coffee, he gave his name as Merry Christmas. So, when his coffee is done and they would call out the name, they'd be forced to say, Merry Christmas. I put one over on Starbucks, and he forced the name of Jesus Christ right back into their mouths. And this guy's video was so popular, he ended up getting featured on freaking CNN. Okay. I'm an atheist activist. I love Christmas. I call it Christmas. I think Christmas is what you make it. I always like to say it this way. I don't have to believe in a literal Christ to enjoy Christmas. I don't have to believe in Thor to enjoy Thursdays. I don't have to believe in Mars, the god Mars, to enjoy the month of March. So many of our days and weeks and holidays and special occasions are named after mythical beings and things that we don't take literally, but they become these sort of known quantities, the colloquial terms by which we call the day. Merry Christmas does not bother me one bit, but that fact doesn't serve their narrative, that they're being persecuted, that they're being attacked, and they must be insulated from criticism. No, they have to demonize people like me and secular Americans like me. And so they've gone on this full-on attack narrative. This is very common with Fox News. Of course, I've been speaking about them because they're the topic of my new book. We've got the Fox News morning show, Fox and Friends, talking about the attack on the national motto, "In God We Trust." How dare they? These heathen attackers. I always like to say, you know what we heathen attackers actually in real life look like? We look like this guy. We're just holding up like a finger going, hey, wait a minute. Like something doesn't jive here. This is exclusionary. This was not part of the original model of the United States. This is not what the founders of the Constitution intended. Excuse me, can we talk about this? This is essentially what we look like. Right? It's not right. It's not logical. It's not moral. It's not just. I'm reminded of that famous Emerson quote. He said, "Let me never fall into the vulgar mistake of dreaming that I am persecuted whenever I am contradicted." And Christian privilege in the United States does not like to be contradicted. So it cries persecution. We're being attacked. We're being attacked by those awful un-American, even treasonous liberals and secular humanists. In 2018, there was a Fox News opinion piece which said that atheists want to silence everyone else through intimidation. Atheists today are the most arrogant, ignorant, and dangerous people on earth. Atheism has caused more deaths, murders, and bloodshed than any other belief system in the history of the world. By the way, I would love for this man to do just a modicum of research on the history of the Christian church. Okay. He calls atheists the most dangerous people on earth, and he blames us for pretty much everything that's wrong in the universe. And American Christians are eagerly buying into this fear and this narrative. Political scientists Ryan Burge and Paul Jupe surveyed over 1,000 white evangelicals in May of last year, among others, with a few questions about how different groups actually see each other. And this gets us into tribes and tribalism. The majority of white evangelicals were terrified. They were terrified that the lefties were coming to strip away their rights. 60% of white evangelicals thought atheists would strip away their constitutional rights. I mean, not just disagree, but strip away, but remove their liberties in this country. 58% of white evangelicals thought Democrats would do the same thing, prevent them from going out and holding rallies and teaching in public schools and speaking in public or even running for public office. They're coming. They're coming for us. They're going to take everything away from us. Interestingly, about half as many surveyed white evangelicals would give those same constitutional rights to atheists. About half as many of those people said they would afford to atheists the right that they claim for themselves. Fewer than 1 in 3 white evangelicals surveyed would allow an atheist to speak in public, to teach, to run for office, because, of course, we're dangerous, immoral, evil. If you're looking for tolerance for the rights of people you oppose, it's the atheists that more than double of that number who say they would give fundamentalists the right to speak. It's the atheists in this country who are saying, you know what? No, I would give other people disagreeing viewpoints the constitutional right to speak, to assemble, to teach, to run for office. That number at 53% for Democrats. So if you look at it by this measure, who's being more faithful to the Constitution of the United States? And yet this notion that Christianity is under attack and persecuted sells really well. And who buys it? Evangelical Fox News Christians. It is fascinating to watch them shout persecution in arguably the most free country on the planet. They can hold or express a personal faith. They can get together and pray in groups, home groups or groups at a public place. They can attend worship at church anytime, any day, whatever. They can have religious assemblies. They have Bibles. They read Bibles. They gift Bibles. They wear religious apparel, jewelry. They have cross tattoos, etc. They have Christian broadcasting is all over the place in this country. Radio stations, televisions. They have bookstores, retail outlets. They watch religious TV all the time. They have religious messages displayed on their vehicles and in their yard signs. They have crosses in their yards, Christian crosses, and they're protected as they do so. All these religious symbols, especially around the holiday, they've got the nativities and the baby Jesus and angels and all that stuff. And of course, they get to proselytize. They can evangelize. They can go out and take mission trips. They can go out and spread the gospel without any fear of reprisal. And yet Christians remain the martyrs. They're the ones being persecuted. Why? I'm reminded of this scripture in the book of Matthew. Christ said, "Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." I think this is part of the ticket here. This is part of our understanding of why they cry persecution. What happens when you live in arguably the most religiously free country on the planet, but you are commanded by your God to be persecuted for his sake? I mean, what happens if if I'm of no concern to the devil and he's not worried about me and I'm not really under attack, I must not be doing God's good work. So we manufacture the persecution. Now I get to feel like the champion, the God warrior, the soldier in Yahweh's army doing battle for all eternity. There's sort of for lack of a better way of saying it, there's sort of a masturbatory quantity to this, right? I mean, it makes him feel really, really good. Plus, crying persecution serves as a conversation stopper when other people say, no, you have too much power and privilege, and it's simply not fair, it's not lawful, it's not constitutional, it is not American. Right? So we say, I'm sorry, you've overreached, and they cry religious liberty, Christian persecution, and they use that narrative to protect their dominance over the rest of us in this country. Go back to my slide here quickly. Now we have President Trump. They're scrambling. Oh, especially with the Supreme Court in play. It's insane down here. They're scrambling to secure as much power and influence as they possibly can. They've been stacking the courts at all levels, submitting the bills, appointing the administrators, seizing the day, for the hour is short. I agree with Nick Fish, president of American Atheist. He called it a smash and grab for Christian nationalists. Why the desperate push? Well, watch this. In this country, the United States, according to the Pew Research Survey of Religion, in this United States reveals a steady decline in the number of people who identify as Christian. That number's going down. Fewer people are interested or engaged in Christianity, and a steady rise in the religiously unaffiliated, not necessarily atheists. But for them, religion is simply not a meaningful or necessary part of their lives. That number represents a quarter of Americans. The number really goes up with the 29 and under crowd. America's future, refreshingly less religious, less superstitious, certainly not evangelical Christians. So Christian nationalists, the people who have been consolidating power under the Christian flag, they see this writing on the wall. The culture is changing. It's inevitable. And they flip out. Their days are numbered. The tide is turning. They're going to have to share the table with the rest of us. And this should give us some hope about the long game. This desperation, this flop sweat that we're seeing by the Christian nationalists, the reason they're freaking out and scrambling, the reason it's madness and chaos down here in the United States is because they can see the future. They see an increasingly less religious America. People who want the state church line protected, people who don't think the government should be a church, and those people vote. The opponents of Christian nationalism do not want to make religious belief illegal, or to close down churches, or to keep people from saying Merry Christmas, or to abolish private prayers, or outlaw the Bible, or infringe on authentic constitutional religious liberty. We just want the founding fathers of America, who purposely designed a nation that was not supposed to be a church, we want their framework recognized. I'm reminded of that quote by Einstein. Unthinking respect for authority is the greatest enemy of truth. We reject blind allegiance to authority because we are creatures of reason. I realize that Christianity is a religion, and I think all theistic faiths really are authoritarian in nature. And Christianity, being the primary one in this country, is the one I focus on here. But it's essentially a shame culture. It's a fear culture, because under all the love language, you've got the threat of hell. You've got shaming people who are expressing themselves in a way that is not represented by the Christian scriptures or part of the Christian dogma. We are othering people on every level, whether it's another religion or another sexual identity or just another philosophy about the way life ought to be lived. And we've also got this idea that you are supposed to line up behind authority with a capital A and do whatever they say, which is another reason that Trump appeals to a lot of these people. In the United States, there's a section, a culture of people that if they have bought the notion in advance that this is a divine appointment and we are to follow without question because God has put the chess pieces on the board in a certain order, they have turned off critical thinking. They are not reasoning. They are merely following blindly. And unthinking respect for authority is the greatest enemy of truth. As those who elect our representatives in this country to be representatives of all Americans, especially those of us who are not Christian, people of all faiths and none, we have to hold our leaders accountable. And that's a very important thing. Andrew Seidel is a constitutional attorney and a friend of mine. He had this tweet that he put out back in 2019. He said, "Dear white evangelicals, we're not coming for your rights. We're coming for your privilege. You'll be able to worship as you see fit so long as you don't use government power to promote your religion or use your religion to violate another's rights." And I think that's the point I agree with the most right now. Hey, Christian nationalists need to know we're coming. I'm not coming for your rights. I'm coming for your privilege. The tide is slowly turning. The nation, the United States of America, slowly evolving. It's a tumultuous time. This is like the pain of birth going on here. But more and more, there's a demographic that is less and less interested in being told who they are, what they think, how they ought to act, and why. Christian nationalism, I believe, is seeing its final era. And we are going to eventually, after the tumult of the next several years, perhaps even decade or so, I really do see a more representative government. The elected politicians who are representative of an increasingly non-religious constituency here in the United States. But it's going to be tough getting there. It's crazy. It's chaotic. It's absolute pandemonium down here in the United States right now. It's an encouraging time in a few ways and a discouraging time in a great many others in my own life. I have committed myself against Donald Trump as an activist because of on a great many levels, but one of the big ones is because of his enabling of Christian nationalism in a secular America. And I don't think he knows anything at all about the Bible. I don't think he's literate about the Bible. I would pay $1,000 to sit Donald Trump in a chair and give him a basic Bible quiz. I would like to quiz Donald Trump on the Bible. I would love to do. Please tell me the first 3 words of the Bible, sir. Just a rudimentary quiz. But I oppose this. He knows what his base is, and his base is that demographic. These fearful, paranoid, privileged, white American Christians who are terrified of living in a world that is more diverse, including the diversity of ideas. And we are going to try to somehow push through the next 40 whatever days through the November 3rd election to get ourselves a little more back on track, where we see some sanity returning. I know that you in Canada look down at us and wonder if we've all collectively lost our minds. I take encouragement, and I think you might as well, that Donald Trump, even in 2016, lost the popular vote by 3 million people. It was the Electoral College that saved him. But even the majority of voters did not enable this man. And that gives me a little bit of hope as we head toward November and the choosing of our leader for the next 4 years. Hopefully, that leader will be less interested in turning the United States into a church and help to restore us into a more reason-based atmosphere that does not distrust science, that isn't promoting conspiracy theories, that isn't retweeting QAnon insanity, that is not retweeting white power videos, but is trying to de-escalate, to try to explain, educate, lean on the evidence, and create what I think would be a less superstitious America, more representative of that the founding fathers intended in the first place. The evangelicals in this country love to quote the founding fathers like they were all devout Christians, but as I talk about in my book, they really weren't. They were, many of them, tremendous religious critics. Some of them questioned the divine nature of Christ, or if Christ even existed at all. Thomas Jefferson, he took a razor and he sliced out all the supernatural stuff out of the Christian New Testament, all of Jesus's miracles and his resurrection. He sliced those verses out, and you can see the Jefferson Bible on display at the Smithsonian here in the United States of America. This is news to a great many Christians. I guess the final message I have before we go to Q&A is, as you look at some of the craziness that's happening down here, just know that many of us are still fighting. We have not given up. We do ultimately, in the long run, hope that the lessening of religiosity among the population will also translate into less superstition, superstitious paranoia, less evangelical agenda among the people who represent us in the halls of power. I think it's going to be a long and nasty and difficult and uphill fight, but we must keep fighting, and so fight we will. Anyway, that's my presentation. If you'd like to read the book, I welcome your support. You can find out more, and you can listen to the introduction of the audiobook for free. It runs about 15 minutes at SethAndrews.com. And I'll turn everything back over to my host.
Thank you, Seth, for an enlightening and entertaining presentation. Seth's book, Confession of a Former Fox News Christian, is available online. You can have it by visiting www.sethandrews.com. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are Canada's only national nonprofit for science and free thought. We hope that those of you who are not already members will consider purchasing a membership. We will include a link to our membership page in the chat window and through Meetup. I hope that you will consider joining. Not only does your membership provide financial support to CFIC, it also adds your voice to that of others who support science, critical thinking, and secularism. As we grow in numbers, so does our influence with government decision makers and the public opinion that guides them. We advocate for evidence-based decisions on government policy, healthcare, public education, and human rights. If concerns like climate change, blasphemy laws, education curriculum, medical pseudoscience are important to you, please become a CFIC member. In today's landscape, there are too many people spreading misinformation and trying to mislead you. Without us, the major influencers will continue to be at large. self-interested groups and institutions that benefit from making baseless claims and spreading pseudoscientific nonsense. So please consider a membership. It's only $30 per year. Finally, a big thanks to the CFIC volunteers. If you would like to volunteer with CFIC, you can sign up on our website. There are many interesting positions for you to choose from. We are going to try to unmute all of your microphones, and let's please give Seth a big round of applause. So hold on, I will try to do that now.
You're all very kind. Thank you.
Oh, well. Was I able to unmute everybody? I guess we did, yes. Thank you, Seth.
Yay! You're all very kind. I appreciate so much the invitation. Thanks to CFI for the work that you do. And I hope that as we move forward in these sort of weird and uncertain days, that we can all sort of keep some optimism, keep kicking. I'll commit not to give up if you won't. And just know that there are people down here, your southern neighbors, who really do want good to prevail. We really do want reason and science and a better world to win the day. And we're doing whatever we can to try to make that happen. And we feel your support and concern and empathy from up there in Canada. And we're big fans of Canada. And I hope I get a chance to cross the border one day soon and shake hands with as many of you as I can. So all my best for the rest of the year and far beyond.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone. Until next time. Bye-bye.